Well, good morning. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you with us. You know, I rarely eat potatoes, but sometimes I want a potato. But being diabetic, I want to make them in such a way that they don't make me feel bad. So this is my twice-baked potato and cauliflower, which is approximately half the carbs of potatoes. And it is delicious. Now, before I start cooking, I hope you will give me a thumbs up and subscribe and click the little bell in the top right and you'll get notices when I post new videos. Now let's get cooking. So this is a 16-ounce potato, a whole pound by itself. I would actually prefer to do this with two 8-ounce potatoes, but we're basically not going to cook them in the skins anyway. Well, I'll cook one in the skins. So I've washed it and I'm just going to pierce it to keep it from blowing up. And this will have to cook a long time. I have my thermostat set at 425 and I'll try it at 50 minutes, but it's probably going to take more. I'll check it. So in the oven at 425, set the timer at 50 minutes. I'll be back. After 50 minutes, I'm going to test it. And I'll do that by just inserting a fork right in the center. And if I feel any resistance, I'll cook it some more. And right in the center, there's a little hard knot. So I'm going to cook it for another 15 minutes. You don't want any uncooked portions of the baked potato. It'll just ruin the whole dish. While that's cooking, I'll go over the ingredients with you. This is like a stuffed potato. This is about 3 tablespoons full of sour cream. And I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of butter. Yes, I'm using grated cheese. You can use any kind of cheese you wanted, but I'm not up to grating today. I have a red pepper. You know, I know, some of you food snobs are just having a heart attack that I'm using grated cheese, but really, it's okay. That's pre-cooked bacon. And I have some heavy whipping cream out. I may not use it. It depends on the texture. And I have some steamable frozen cauliflower here. You can use fresh cauliflower. Steam it until it's totally done. I'm just going to do this in the microwave. So for counting carbs, I have 22 ounces of cauliflower here. So I tested this potato. It's done in the middle. I let it cool off just enough that I can safely handle it. And I'm going to cut it in half. Now, if you were going to stuff these back in the potato shell, you would have rubbed this potato in oil and kosher salt before you baked it, and that would make the shells crispy. I am going to stuff one back in, but you know, there'll be a whole lot more mixture than there are shells. So I'm going to put mine in my little 6-ounce souffle dishes. Now I'm just going to scoop this out. See all that steam? It's still real hot inside, but cool enough on the outside that I can handle it. And I'm going to salt it. Potatoes really don't have much flavor without salt. That was about a tablespoonful of salt. Remember, we still have all the cauliflower to add, so we'll need a good bit of salt. And I'm using some freshly ground black pepper here, just to your taste. You can also use red pepper flakes if you like. Then I'm going to add a little garlic, maybe a half a teaspoonful. This is garlic powder, not garlic salt. And I don't recommend fresh garlic in this because you don't want to bite into a little chunk. That's not tasty. Garlic is tasty, but biting into a chunk of it in other foods is not. So now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of butter, and I've cut it up into fairly small pieces so that it will incorporate quickly. I'm using a hand masher and not a mixer because I like to leave a few little soft chunks of potato and cauliflower in mine. I don't necessarily want it really, really smooth. But you can use a hand mixer if you want to. You know, even when you're making mashed potatoes, it's pretty important that you don't over mix them because you break down the starch, you change the texture. Now I'm going to start adding the cauliflower. You can see I have a lot more cauliflower than I do potato. And you can change that if you want to. You can make it half and half. But at this ratio, 16 ounces of potato to 22 ounces of cauliflower, this is about 1.7 grams per ounce. So I'm making 6-ounce portions. So I'm going to have, oh, you can do the math, about 10 grams of carbs per serving. Now, if you're on 20 grams of carbs a day on a keto diet, this is probably not going to fit. And, you know, they don't allow potatoes anyway. But I eat about 50 grams of carbs a day. That keeps my glucose level where it's supposed to be. And that allows me enough freedom to eat some things I really love. But, you know, if you are not diabetic, just senior, here in goes the sour cream, it's still a good idea to cut down on your carbs. You may not want to go as low as I do, 50 grams of carbs a day, but you need to cut back on them. And I say that quoting medical authorities, research, low carb, higher fat, some good healthy fat, butter, that sort of fat is really good for you. It's good for your brain health. I know I say that in every video, but this might be your first one of my videos. And I think it's a very important piece of information that most medical professionals won't give you because they're all worried about cholesterol. I'm going to taste this for salt. You know what the cells in your brain are made of? They're made of cholesterol. So that needs a little more salt. And I'm just going to put in another pinch. And I may even have to put in a little bit more. But I'll start with that. That was about a 1/4 teaspoonful. I don't want to oversalt it, but you know, it just doesn't have much flavor without salt. And I'm going to add just a little bit more of the garlic powder. This is kind of a fluid recipe. The only thing I can tell you about the salt and the seasonings is when you get to this stage, taste it. You had a whole lot of cauliflower and a good amount of potato. Both are bland without salt. Salt it to your taste. Salt it before you get it to the table. And that way you end up using less salt total. So I think I've mashed this to the consistency I want. It's a little creamy. It's not super creamy. And there's some tiny small pieces of cauliflower and potato in there. I'm just going to make sure that salt is mixed in. And then I'm going to start adding the ingredients. And you know, you can add any ingredients you want. You can use more cheese, less cheese, all cheese. I'm using some green onions here. That was 1 pack, which I think had about 6 or 7 little green onions in it. And I used half of the green part and all of the white part and chop them small. If you don't have green onions, you can use some regular onions. Just chop them small. So now I'm going to add the bacon, and this is 5 slices of bacon, and I cut it up with my kitchen shears pretty small. You know, at my Kroger, the pre-cooked bacon is as cheap as the not cooked bacon. But if you're cooking it yourself, don't overcook it because it's going to cook another 30 minutes in the oven. So I've added in my little chopped red pepper. And then I'm going to add my cheese. Now somebody's going to say, oh my God, I thought this was healthy cooking. She's using grated cheese. You know what? All that stuff that you hear about wood being in your cheese, that's stuff that is posted on websites that have no purpose in life except to scare you about your food. It does have added cellulose to prevent it sticking together. That's not a bad thing. Just eat it or don't. It's up to you. But there are days when grating a pound of cheese is just not something I can do, and until you've lived with arthritic hands, don't judge. So I'm going to get this all mixed in, and then I'll taste it again for salt. And Doesn't that look good? That's pretty. We've got the green, we've got the red. It almost looks Christmassy. It could be a Super Bowl snack if you watch that kind of thing. And you could make these in muffin tins in 3 to 4 ounce portions, and they would be a hit at your Super Bowl party. So I'm adding my last little bit of salt because it just didn't have quite enough. I'll stir that in, and then I'm going to clean this up and we'll start stuffing. So this is my great big potato skin, and I have taken one side of one half and folded it up and put it in the bottom to make the contents stand up a little bit more. That works really well if you're using 8-10 ounce potatoes. This is just a huge one. This is going to be 2 servings, and I'm going to put this one in the freezer. I'll just wrap it up in plastic wrap while I'm cooking everything else, and put it in the freezer. And when I get ready to cook it, I will put it in the fridge and let it thaw, and then I'll bake it just like I baked the other ones. And I'm going to weigh this because portion control is kind of important to me. And if I can get it to sit up here, it's almost 12 ounces, so that's 2 servings. When I cook it, I'll cut it in half and have 2 servings from it. Then I'm going to put the rest of the mixture into these little 6 ounce souffle dishes. I got these for creme brulee, but now I use them all the time. I'm going to have to get another set on payday. I got them recently, and they hold 6 ounces, depending on how much you mound them up, of course. I mean, I weighed them to make sure that I had about 6 ounce portions in here. The brand on these little dishes, by the way, is Sweece, S-W-E-E-S-C. It was a new brand for me. I turned the light off. It was just too bright. You couldn't see what I was doing. And they're really heavy. They're nice. I like them. No, I'm not an Amazon associate. I'm not a Sweece associate. I just like them, so I'm telling you. And they have a 30-day no-chip guarantee. And when I ordered them, a coupon for 50% off another order came. So guess what I'm getting? So they're all stuffed, and I saved out enough cheese for the topping. You know, you could put some Parmesan on top, and Parmesan is an exception to my whole discussion of grated cheese. Not because of any health issues, but because pre-grated Parmesan is just not very good. So we're going to cover these up with cheese. And I had to clean up my pan because I had dropped cheese on it, and that'll make a mess in my cast iron griddle. And you kind of press the cheese down into the potatoes to keep it from coming off when it's cooking. Now my oven is preheated to 350. I'm going to bake these for 30 minutes to make sure they're good and hot all the way through, and the little green onions cook. Now here's the big one. I'm not going to cook yet. I'm just showing it to you. So 30 minutes at 350, and then about 2 minutes under the broiler, just enough to make sure the cheese is melted and bubbly. And this is what we've got. Aren't those pretty? They are so pretty. When I put these in the oven, I started the rest of my meal, which will be a separate video. It's braised chicken and winter vegetables. Now, while that's cooking and I'm letting this cool a little bit, let me tell you how I'm going to store these. I'm only going to eat one tonight. 3 of these are going fully cooked into the freezer, and I'll just put the whole little souffle dish in the freezer. When they are frozen, I'll run a knife around the outside and pop them out and put them in a bag, because I don't want to keep my dishes in the freezer. And then when I get ready to cook them, I'll pop them back into a souffle dish, let them thaw a little bit, and then cook them in the microwave. If you let them thaw first, 3 minutes will be enough, and they'll get hot and bubbly and tasty. I'll give you a peek at the rest of my meal, then I'll plate it up. You know, this meal has a lot of eye appeal, and it's just bursting with flavor. And I'll show you the video of the chicken and vegetables in a separate video, because we're going to concentrate on this wonderful twice baked potato and cauliflower. You can see I left some chunks in there. You can see those nice fresh veggies. And you know, the taste is it's just amazing. No, it doesn't taste exactly like just potatoes, but you get some of that creamy potato mouthfeel and texture and the flavor. And the cauliflower is good. And I love this. And I don't feel guilty because it's fairly low carb. I hope you try this recipe. I hope you like it as much as I like it. And I hope to see you again tomorrow.